Myanmar enters fourth year of post-coup crisis. Russia and Ukraine exchange prisoners despite plane crash. Thank you for joining us. I'm SAHIH and this is World Today. Myanmar today entered its fourth year since a coup snuffed out a short-lived dance with democracy, with the embattled junta warning it will do whatever it takes to crush opposition to its rule. The junta extended a state of emergency by 6 months on the eve of the anniversary, once again delaying promised elections with a fresh round of US sanctions announced hours later.
In the early hours of 1st February 2021, security forces rounded up Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi and lawmakers from her National League for Democracy NLD party as they prepared to take their seats in parliament. Across the country, huge marches against the coup were met by a brutal and sustained crackdown that sent thousands of protesters seeking ways to fight back. According to a local monitoring group, more than 4,400 people have been killed in the military's crackdown on dissent and over 25,000 arrested. Clashes and reprisals have ravaged swathes of Myanmar since, forcing more than 2 million people to flee their homes. On Wednesday, junta chief Min Aung Hlaing said the military would do whatever it takes to crush oppositions to its rule. The announcement came after the military extended a state of emergency, further delaying a timetable for fresh elections it has promised to hold. Due to expire at midnight, the junta said in a statement that the state of emergency was kept in place to continue the process of combating terrorists.
A Thai court yesterday ruled the biggest party in parliament had violated the constitution in a seeking to change a law against insulting the monarchy in what could set a precedent for any future review of one of the world's strictest lumberjack law.
The Move Forward party won last year's election on a progressive platform that included a once unthinkable proposal to amend the lumberjack law, which carries penalties of up to 15 years in jail for each perceived insult of Thailand's powerful crown. Speaking to reporters following the ruling, former Move Forward party leader Peter Limjaroenrat insisted that the plan was not an attempt to deteriorate the monarchy, but rather to find a consensus for Thailand to move forward politically. The court ordered the Move Forward party and its leader, Peter Limjaroenrat, to stop all forms of communication aimed at bringing reforms to the law, under which criticism of the powerful royal family can lead to up to 15 years in prison on a single charge. In a country where reverence for the monarch has for decades been promoted as central to national identity, the law, under which at least 260 people have been prosecuted in the past few years, is seen by many royalists as sacrosanct.
Taiwan's military yesterday simulated a scenario where China suddenly turns one of its regular drills around the island into an actual attack. On the same day, China staged another combat readiness patrol near Taiwan. Navy vessels, troops, tanks and armoured personnel carriers participated in exercises carried out in Kaohsiung and Taitung.
According to military officer Ko Ting Yi, when speaking to the media, the army had improved training processes in the face of increasingly frequent enemy threats. He said in the face of increasingly frequent enemy threats, the army has continued to make breakthroughs and strengthen its training, while the troops have used realistic combat training to enhance basic combat capabilities. Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory despite the objections of the government in Taipei, says China's armed forces routinely operate in the skies and seas around the island in an effort to pressure Taiwan to accept Chinese sovereignty. Taiwan's defense ministry says Chinese warplanes and warships often carry out joint combat readiness patrols. It reported another such patrol on Wednesday involving 22 Chinese aircraft.
Russia and Ukraine on Wednesday completed a prisoner exchange, the first since the crash last week of a Russian military transport plane that Moscow says was carrying 65 Ukrainian soldiers ahead of a similar swap. The Russian Defense Ministry said each side had got 195 soldiers back and that its own soldiers would be flown to Moscow to receive medical and psychological treatment.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on his official account on X, formerly Twitter, that it was one of the biggest swaps so far. He gave a slightly higher number for the number of Ukrainians returned. Ukraine's governmental body in charge of prisoners of war said that what was the 50th prisoner exchange of its kind had returned home soldiers involved in the defense of the cities of Mariupol and Kherson, as well as soldiers captured by Russia on Snake Island in the Black Sea. The two countries have carried out periodic prisoner swaps via intermediaries since the war began nearly 2 years ago, despite the absence of any peace talks between them since the early months of the conflict. The latest and biggest exchange was on 3rd January, when they traded a total of 478 captives, following mediation by the United Arab Emirates. Russia says Ukraine shot down the plane carrying prisoners for last week's swap with a ground-to-air missile and that all 74 people on board were killed. Ukraine has neither confirmed nor denied that it downed the plane.
Russia's lower house of parliament on Wednesday gave its final approval to a new law that would allow the authorities to confiscate property from people convicted of deliberately spreading fake news about the army. The State Duma had approved the legislation in its third and final reading at the televised plenary session.
The measure will also apply to those found guilty of discrediting the armed forces, those calling for sanctions against Russia, and those found guilty of inciting extremist activity.
За нашу страну, погибающих, за нашу страну, за семьи. Почему нет закона, который защищает их? Почему нет закона, который наказывает негодяев, плюющих в спину, втыкающих нож нашим бойцам, солдатам и офицерам? Почему нет закона, который бы наказал их так, чтобы неповадно было?
The new law will still need to be approved by the upper house of parliament and President Vladimir Putin. It would also allow the state to seize the property of Russians who have left the country and have criticized the war in Ukraine while continuing to rely on revenue from renting out their houses or apartments in Russia.
The European Commission on Wednesday proposed measures to limit agricultural imports from Ukraine and offer greater flexibility on fallow land rules in a bid to quell protests by angry farmers in France and other EU members. The Commission said it would extend the suspension of import duties on Ukrainian exports for another year to June 2025.
They were originally suspended in 2022 to support Ukraine's economy following the Russian invasion, which has closed off most shipments via the traditional Black Sea route. The Commission proposal, which will require approval from EU governments and the European Parliament, introduces an emergency brake for the most sensitive products, poultry, eggs and sugar, allowing tariffs if imports exceed the average levels of 2022 and 2023. Ukraine's EU neighbours, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Romania and Slovakia, have complained that the farm imports have upset their markets, leading to protests by farmers and truckers. The Commission also proposed exempting EU farmers for 2024 from a requirement to keep a minimum share of their land fallow while still receiving EU farm support payments.
Northern Ireland will receive funding totally over £3 billion in a deal struck with the British government, according to Britain's Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Chris Heaton-Harris, on Wednesday.
Britain published a package of measures designed to ease concerns over Northern Ireland's post-Brexit status, saying the new arrangement would ensure unfettered trade into the province from the rest of Britain.
And finally, this deal will help put Northern Ireland's public services on a sustainable footing, with funding totalling over £3 billion to support public services in Northern Ireland, providing a solid foundation for the executive to deliver better outcomes in the day-to-day lives of the people in Northern Ireland.
After almost 2 years of a power vacuum in Northern Ireland, the regional government might be within days of returning, restoring a key part of a 1998 peace deal which ended decades of sectarian violence in the region. Introducing the measures to Parliament, Northern Ireland Minister Chris Heaton-Harris described the package as the right deal for all sides to finally settle the concerns among unionists in Northern Ireland over the post-Brexit settlement.
The International Monetary Fund on Wednesday approved a fresh $4.7 billion for Argentina, praising the new administration of President Javier Milei as he enacts bold cost cutting to bring the country's ailing economy back on track. IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva praised the Milei government's bold actions to restore macroeconomic stability and address long-standing impediments to growth.
The new disbursement, which brings to around $40.6 billion the amount sent to Argentina as part of a $44 billion aid program, is intended to support the new authority's strong policy efforts to restore macroeconomic stability. Argentina is grappling with severe economic struggles after decades of mismanagement that has driven poverty levels to 40% and pushed inflation to an annual rate of more than 200%. Milei, a 53-year-old outsider, won a resounding election victory on a wave of fury over the crisis marked by debt, rampant money printing, inflation and fiscal deficit. But his cost-cutting measures have also prompted backlash and mass protests, with many citizens fearing he will leave them less well off. Milei does not hold a majority in Congress, and moderate opposition lawmakers have warned they will seek further changes to the bill, in particular on the touchy issue of the delegation of special powers to the executive in an economic emergency and on the scope and extent of privatizations.
Still to come, Indian Navy rescues vessels hijacked by pirates. Stay tuned.
Kita perkenalkan sistem padu pangkalan data utama. Pertama, ia selaras dengan pendekatan dan dasar transformasi digital. Kedua, menjamin supaya manfaat dan kemudahan itu dinikmati oleh orang yang berhak menerimanya. Dan tentunya dengan cara yang sedemikian, mengurangkan kos, mengurangkan ketirisan. Dan kaedah diperkenalkan melalui padu ini ialah secara tidak langsung memaksa setiap warga negara faham tentang transformasi digital dan menggunakan sistem padu. Dengan sendirinya kita ada pencerahan kecelekan budaya dan kecelekan digital.
Icelanders are working round the clock to build dikes the size of 3-story buildings to protect a vital power plant and homes from lava flows since volcanoes near the capital Reykjavik that were dormant for nearly 800 years became active.
The sixth volcanic system, which experts forecast will be active for up to 3 centuries, stretched under Iceland's southwestern Reykjanes Peninsula, home to 30,000 people, which has witnessed 5 eruptions since 2021. Amid concerns about an imminent eruption, authorities in November began building defense walls around the peninsula's Sarvenski geothermal power plant. Construction of defences has also started around the nearby town of Grindavik, home to one of Iceland's key fishing ports and nearly 4,000 residents who were evacuated before the recent eruption north of the town. The biggest barriers are about 40 meters wide, between 8 and 10 meters high, and 4 meters wide at the top. The Department for Civil Protection is also digging hot water pipelines deeper underground and lifting power and telecom lines higher to protect them.
The Indian Navy on Tuesday released footage of the rescue operation, an Iranian-flagged fishing vessel hijacked by Somali pirates. According to India's Defence Ministry, the Navy rescued 2 Iranian vessels on the same day.
The ministry in a statement said the INS Sumitra patrol vessel rescued 17 Iranian crew members aboard one boat early on Monday before responding to another distress call to free 19 Pakistani nationals on another. The rescues came amid a resurgence of Somali piracy in the Indian Ocean since last month, following years without a major attack. India has deployed at least a dozen warships east of the Red Sea to provide security against pirates and has investigated more than 250 vessels as Western powers focus on attacks by Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis. India has not joined the United States-led task force for the Red Sea and does not have any warships there. However, officials said it currently has 2 frontline warships in the Gulf of Aden and at least 10 warships in the northern and western Arabian Sea, along with surveillance aircraft. This is India's largest deployment in the region.
Over a week into Cameroon's groundbreaking campaign to combat malaria, momentum is building as more women arrive at clinics with their children for the world's first ever routine vaccine program against the mosquito-borne disease.
Around 40 years in the making, the World Health Organization (WHO) approved RTSS vaccine developed by British drug maker GSK. The vaccine is supplementary in nature, meaning that it is meant to work alongside existing tools such as bed nets to combat malaria, which in Africa kills nearly 500,000 children under the age of 5 each year. According to the Global Vaccine Alliance Gavi, after successful trials, including Ghana and Kenya, Cameroon is the first country to administer doses through a routine program that 19 other countries aim to roll out this year. After a slow start last week, which healthcare workers attributed to a lack of awareness about the campaign, facilities are reporting a gradual increase in the numbers of vaccinations. About 6.6 million children in these countries are targeted for malaria vaccination through years 2024 to 2025.
Next in sports, Japan, Iran booked quarterfinal spots in Asia Cup. Stay with us. Four times champions Japan eased into the quarterfinals of the Asian Cup with a clinical 3-1 victory over Bahrain last night at Al Tumama Stadium with goals from Ritsu Doan, Takefusa Kubo and Aide Ueda. Bahrain coach Juan Antonio Pizzi had been looking to heal old wounds after his Saudi Arabia team lost to Japan at the same stage in 2019, but Hajime Moriyasu's side put in a commanding performance and rarely looked trouble against the Gulf nation.
Japan took the lead in the 31st minute when Sia Maikuma unleashed a venomous strike that crashed off the post, but Matilda Doan was alert to pounce on the rebound to score from close range. Japan went 2-0 up just after half-time through a stroke of good fortune when an unmarked Kubo received the ball inside the box, turned and fired home, with the goal being awarded after a VAR check for an offside call. Bahrain halved the deficit from a corner when Japan keeper Zion Suzuki saved Said Bakir's header, but as he attempted to catch the ball when it looped up in the air, Yuda tried to head it clear and they collided as the ball went over the line. However, Yuda made amends for the own goal when he made it 3-1 after quickly evading 3 Bahrain defenders, and as they tried to stop him racing away by pulling his shirt, the striker pulled the trigger from a tight angle to beat the keeper.
Meanwhile, Iran survived going down to 10 men to beat Syria 5-3 in a penalty shootout in the Asian Cup last 16 after the game ended 1-1 after extra time, setting up a tasty quarter-final clash with 4 times champion Japan.
Syria's Fahd Yusuf saw his penalty saved by goalkeeper Ali Reza Ben Ravan in the shootout, while Iran converted all their spot kicks, with keeper Ehsan Hassafi netting the decisive one. Iran were one of 3 teams to finish the group stage with maximum points, and knockout stage debutant Syria had done well to contain them until they gifted their Middle Eastern counterparts a penalty in the first half. Ahem Osu deliberately barged into Mehdi Taremi without making any attempt to go for the ball, and the Iranian striker stepped up to take the penalty, firing the spot kick into the bottom right corner for his 3rd goal of the tournament. But Syria leveled when Pablo Sabak came on as a substitute and immediately won a penalty when he beat the offside trap and was fouled by Brent Van, with Omar Kerbin calmly slotting it home to make it 1-1. Things went from bad to worse for Iran when Taremi was sent off for a 2nd yellow card, having been booked for simulation earlier. Taremi fouled Alal Al-Dali to earn another booking and reduced Iran to 10 men for the final minutes and extra time. However, Iran managed to hold on and take the game to penalties, where they were unfazed by the pressure, extending coach Amir Ghalini's unbeaten run to 15 games since he took charge of Team Mali in March last year.
Liverpool remain on course to send Jurgen Klopp off as Premier League winner after Chelsea were thrashed 4-1 at Anfield early this morning. Conor Bradley was the star of the show as the 20-year-old right-back scored and teed up goals for Diogo Jota and Dominic Szoboszlai.
Klopp had called for the news of his impending departure at the end of the season not to be a distraction, and on this evidence it may only provide more inspiration for his side to deliver just a second league title in 34 years. Once again, the injured Mohamed Salah was not missed as Jota and Núñez provided a constant threat, while Bradley's emergence is blocking Trent Alexander-Arnold's return to the starting lineup. Jota was not so forgiving when he carved through the heart of the Chelsea defence to slam home on 23rd minutes. Bradley has been a revelation since a knee injury to Alexander-Arnold opened his path to the first team. The Northern Irishman produced a finish that Alexander-Arnold would have been proud of as he burst down the right and fired low and hard into the far corner to double Liverpool's lead. The defeat left Chelsea down in 10th and now 20 points adrift of Liverpool.
Meanwhile, star striker Erling Haaland made his Manchester City comeback as the champions beat Burnley 3-1 at home ground. Haaland had been sidelined for nearly 2 months by a foot injury, but City barely missed the presence of the Norwegian as they won 9 and drew 1 of the 10 games when he was absent.
Julian Alvarez again stepped up in Haaland's absence as the Argentine struck twice on his 24th birthday to effectively end the game at the Etihad as a contest inside 22 minutes. The Argentine headed in front of Matheus Nunes' cross and then finished off a clever free kick from Kevin De Bruyne. Rodri made it 3-0 inside the first minute of the second half, but Pep Guardiola's made the expectant home crowd wait until 90 minutes from the time for Haaland's introduction. Rather than the goal-scoring return from last season's Golden Boot winner, it was the Clarets who struck next to end a run of 22 consecutive City goals in league meetings between the sides. Amin Al-Dakhil struck 4 minutes into stoppage time, but it was not more than a consolation for the Clarets, who remain second bottom and 7 points adrift of safety.
In another match, Tottenham Hotspur climbed to 4th place in the Premier League as his second half broadside fight them to an trailing 3-2 home victory over struggling Brentford.
Neil Maupay prodded a lively Brentford into an early lead and Tottenham were raged before half-time, but they responded after the break as Destiny Udogie, Brandon Johnson and Richarlison scored in a devastating 8-minute spell. Sensational going forward, Tottenham left back Udogie's defending was less impressive and his mistake allowed Ivan Toney to halve the deficit with plenty of time remaining. Chances were created at both ends in the closing stages and Tottenham were indebted to a superb stoppage time saved by Guillermo Vicario to secure a 4th successive home league win. Posteglou's side, knocked out of the FA Cup by Manchester City in their previous home game, moved above Aston Villa on goals scored with both clubs on 43 points from 22 games, 3 behind third place Arsenal and 8 adrift of leaders Liverpool.
Manchester United Erik ten Hag manager wants to draw a line under the Marcus Rashford story, saying the forward has taken ownership of the behaviour that had him dropped from the Sunday's FA Cup match.
The 26-year-old missed training last Friday and was absent from Sunday's 4-2 FA Cup 4th round win against Newport County after he had reportedly been spotted at night sports in Belfast earlier in the week.
He has taken responsibility. And for the rest, it's an internal matter. Case closed. It's nothing to do with that. So, but as I said, let's focus on the game and let's move on. I think the statement is clear, and we have to focus on winning football games.
Rashford has had a difficult season, scoring 4 goals after his career-high 30 goals last term. United slipped to 9th in the Premier League standings after Newcastle United's win over Brighton and Hove Albion on Tuesday, and they are languishing 11 points behind 4th place Aston Villa while the Wolves are 11th. Despite their struggles, Ten Hag said his side does not lack confidence. United will have a goalkeeper, Andre Onana, available on Thursday when they play at Wolverhampton's Wanderers. Onana featured in just one of Cameroon's 4 games at the Africa Cup of the Nations, where they went out in the last 16.
The French government announced Wednesday that it had slashed the crowd size for the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics this July amid security and other organizational worries. The traditional opening parade for the game is set to take place in its boat on the River Seine on 26 July, the first time a Summer Olympic has opened outside the main athletic stadium. After months of speculation about the number of people permitted to watch the flotilla, Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin told the France 2 channel on Tuesday around 300,000 ticketed fans would attend. That is half the 600,000 that Darmanin had suggested in 2022 and is even smaller than the most recent estimates of 500,000, underlining the complexity of securing an event over 6 kilometers of river. Darmanin said that 100,000 tickets had been sold for the best vantage point on the lower banks of the river, while another 200,000 would be given free access to the upper banks. The open-air boat parade is in keeping with promises to make the Paris Olympics iconic, with the local organising committee keen to break from past traditions in way it stages the world's biggest sporting event. The 2008 Beijing Summer Olympic ceremony is generally considered to be the most spectacular in history, while the 2012 London ceremony, overseen by transporting director Danny Boyle, won rave reviews for showcasing Britain's quirky side. That ends our bulletin today. Wrapping up with a recap of our top story, Myanmar enters 4th year of post-coup crisis. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. From river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm SAHIH Samsudin, Malaysia Madani, tekad perpaduan penuhi harapan.